Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 21, and we'll also start with Chapter 22, because from verses 26 till the end of this chapter we don't have any purport. So I'll read the translations, and we'll read the summary of Chapter 22, and the first, I think 12 or 13 verses don't have purport. So we'll be reading around 20 to 22 verses, only translation. And then we will start with the purport of the corresponding verse. So I'll read the translation first of Canto 9, Chapter 21, text 26. Following the instructions of the great sage Jaigishavya, Vishwaksena compiled an elaborate description of the mystic yoga system. From Vishwaksena, Udaksena was born, and from Udaksena, Bhallata. All these sons are known as descendants of Brihadishu. The son of Dvimidha was Yavinara, whose son was Kritiman. The son of Kritiman was well known as Satyadhriti. From Satyadhriti came a son named Dridhanemi, who became the father of Suparshva. From Suparshva came a son named Sumati. From Sumati came Sannatiman, and from Sannatiman came Kriti, who achieved mystic power from Brahma and taught 6 Samhitas of the Pratyasama verses of the Samaveda. The son of Kriti was Nipa. The son of Nipa, Udgrayudha. The son of Udgrayudha, Kshemya. The son of Kshemya, Suvira. And the son of Suvira, Ripunjaya. From Ripunjaya came a son named Bahuratha. Purumidha was sonless. Ajamida had a son named Nila by his wife known as Nalini. And the son of Nila was Shanti. The son of Shanti was Sushanti. The son of Sushanti was Puruja. And the son of Puruja was Arka. From Arka came Bharmyashva. And from Bharmyashva came 5 sons: Mudgala, Yavinara, Brihadvishwa, Kampilla, and Sanjaya. Bharmyashva prayed to his sons, "O my sons, please take charge of my 5 states, for you are quite competent to do so." Thus his 5 sons were known as Panchalas. From Mudgala came a dynasty of Brahmanas known as Maudgalya. Mudgala, the son of Bharmyashva, had twin children, one male and the other female. The male child was named Dasa, and the female child was named Ahalya. From the womb of Ahalya, by the semen of her husband Gautama, came a son named Shatananda. The son of Shatananda was Satyadhriti, who was expert in archery. And the son of Satyadhriti was Sharadvan. When Sharadvan met Urvashi, he discharged semen, which fell on a clump of Shara grass. From this semen were born 2 all-auspicious babies, one male and the other female. While Maharaj Shantanu was on a hunting excursion, he saw the male and female children lying in the forest, and out of compassion he took them home. Consequently, the male child was known as Kripa, and the female child was named Kripi. Kripi later became the wife of Dronacharya. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 9th canto, 21st chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Dynasty of Bharat. Chapter 22, the Descendants of Ajamida. So this is a summary. This chapter describes the descendants of Divodasa. It also describes Jarasandha, who belonged to the Riksha dynasty, as well as Duryodhana, Arjuna, and others. The son of Divodasa was Mitrayu, who had 4 sons, one after another: Chavana, Sudasa, Sahadeva, and Somaka. Somaka had 100 sons, of whom the youngest was Prishata, from whom Drupad was born. Drupada's daughter was Draupadi, and his sons were headed by Drishtadyumna. Drishtadyumna's son was Drishtaketu. Another son of Ajamida was named Riksha. From Riksha came a son named Samvarna, and from Samvarna came Kuru, and the king of Kurukshetra. Kuru had 4 sons, Parikshi, Sudhanu, Jahnu, and Nishadha. Among the descendants in the dynasty from Sudhanu were Suhotra, Chavana, Kriti, and Uparichara Vasu. The sons of Uparichara Vasu, including Brihadratha, Kushamba, Matsya, Pratyagra, and Chedipa, became kings of the Chedi state. In the dynasty from Brihadratha came Kushagra, Rishabha, Satyahita, Pushpavan, and Jahu. And from Brihadratha, through the womb of another wife, came Jarasandha, who was followed by Sahadev, Somapi, and Shrutashrava. Parikshi, the son of Kuru, had no sons. Among the descendants of Jahnu were Suratha, Viduratha, Sarvabhauma, Jayasena, Radhika, Ayutayu, Akrodhana, Devatithi, Riksha, Dilipa, and Pratipa. The sons of Pratipa were Devapi, Shantanu, and Bahlika. When Devapi retired to the forest, his younger brother Shantanu became the king. Although Shantanu, being younger, was not eligible to occupy the throne, he disregarded his elder brother. Consequently, there was no rainfall for 12 years. Following the advice of the Brahmanas, Shantanu was ready to return the kingdom to Devapi. But by the intrigue of Shantanu's minister, Devapi became unfit to be king. Therefore, Shantanu resumed charge of the kingdom, and rain fell properly during his regime. By mystic power, Devapi still lives in the village known as Kalapagrama. In this Kaliyuga, when the descendants of Soma, known as Chandravamsha, the lunar dynasty, die out, Devapi, at the beginning of Satyayuga, will re-establish the dynasty of the moon. The wife of Shantanu, named Ganga, gave birth to Bhishma, one of the 12 authorities. 2 sons named Chitrangada and Vichitravirya were also born from the womb of Satyavati by the semen of Shantanu. And Vyasdev was born from Satyavati by the semen of Parashara. Vyasdev instructed the history of the Bhagavatam to his son Shukdeva. Through the womb of the 2 wives and the maidservant of Vichitravirya, Vyasdev begot Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidura. Dhritarashtra had 100 sons, headed by Duryodhana, and 1 daughter named Dushala. Pandu had 5 sons, headed by Yudhishthir, and each of these 5 sons had 1 son from Draupadi. The names of these sons of Draupadi were Prativindhya, Shrutasena, Shrutakirti, Shatanik, and Shrutakarma. Besides these 5 sons, by other wives, the Pandavas had many other sons such as Devaka, Gatotkacha, Sarvagata, Suhotra, Naramitra, Iravan, Babhruvahana, and Abhimanyu. From Abhimanyu, Maharaj Parikshit was born, and Maharaj Parikshit had 4 sons, Janmeja, Shrutasena, Bhimsena, and Ugrasena. Next, Shukdeva Goswami described the future sons of the Pandu family. From Janmejaya, he said, would come a son named Shatanik, and following in the dynasty would be Sahasranika, Ashwamedhaja, Asima Krishna, Nemi Chakra, Chitraratha, Shuchiratha, Vrishtiman, Shusena, Sunitha, Nrichakshu, Sukhinala, Pariplava, Sunaya, Medhavi, Nripanjaya, Durva, Timi, Brihadratha, Sudasa, Shatanika, Durdamana, Mahinara, Dandapani, Nimi, and Kshemaka. Shukdeva Goswami then predicted the kings of the Magadha Vamsha or Magadha dynasty. Sahadev, the son of Jarasandha, would beget Marjari, and from him would come Shrutashrava. Subsequently taking birth in the dynasty will be Yutayu, Niramitra, Sunakshatra, Brihatsena, Karmajit, Sutanjaya, Vipra, Shuchi, Kshema, Suvrata, Dharmasutra, Sama, Dimatsena, Sumati, Subala, Sunitha, Satyajit, Vishwajit and Ripunjaya. So start with text 1 of chapter 22. This chapter 22 is entitled The Descendants of Ajamida. Okay, so translation of text 1. Shukdev Goswami said, O king, the son of Dasa was Mitrayu, and from Mitrayu came 4 sons named Chavana, Sudasa, Sahadeva and Somaka. Somaka was the father of Jantu. Somaka had 100 sons, of whom the youngest was Prishata. From Prishata was born King Drupat, who was opulent in all supremacy. From Maharaj Drupat, Draupadi was born. Maharaj Drupat also had many sons, headed by Drishtadyumna. From Drishtadyumna came a son named Drishtaketu. All these personalities are known as descendants of Bharmyashva, or as the dynasty of Panchal. Another son of Ajamida was known as Riksha. From Riksha came a son named Samvarna, and from Samvarna, through the womb of his wife Tapati, the daughter of the sun god, came Kuru, the king of Kurukshetra. Kuru had 4 sons, Parikshi, Sudhanu, Jahnu and Nishadha. From Sudhanu, Suhotra was born, and from Suhotra, Chavana. From Chavana, Kriti was born. The son of Kriti was Uparichara Vasu, and among his sons, headed by Brihadratha, were Kushamba, Matsya, Pratyagra and Chedipa. All the sons of Uparichara Vasu became rulers of the Chedi state. From Brihadratha, Kushagra was born. From Kushagra, Rishabha. And from Rishabha, Satyahita. The son of Satyahita was Pushpavan, and the son of Pushpavan was Jahu. Through the womb of another wife, Brihadratha begot 2 halves of a son. When the mother saw those 2 halves, she rejected them, but later a she-demon named Jara playfully joined them and said, Come to life, come to life. Then the son named Jarasandha was born. From Jarasandha came a son named Sahadev. From Sahadev, Somapi, and from Somapi, Shrutashrava. The son of Kuru, called Parikshi, had no sons, but the son of Kuru, called Jahnu, had a son named Suratha. From Suratha came a son named Viduratha, from whom Sarvabhauma was born. From Sarvabhauma came Jayasena. From Jayasena, Radhika, and from Radhika, Ayutayu. From Ayutayu came a son named Akrodhana, and his son was Devatithi. The son of Devatithi was Riksha, the son of Vriksha was Dilipa, and the son of Dilip was Pratipa. The sons of Pratipa were Devapi, Shantanu, and Bahalik. Devapi left the kingdom of his father and went to the forest, and therefore Shantanu became the king. Shantanu, who in his previous birth was known as Mahabhisha, had the ability to transform anyone from old age to youth simply by touching that person with his hands. Okay, so text 14 and 15. So we'll be repeating text 15. So we'll do the word to word first, and then we'll read the verse. Okay. Shantanahu Brahmanaihi Uktaha Pariveta Ayam Agrabhuk Rajyam Dehi Agrajaya Ashu Purarashtra Vivriddhaye Shantanur Brahmanairuktaha Parivetayam Agrabhuk Rajyam Dehyagrajayashu Purarashtra Vivriddhaye Shantanuhu Shantanu Brahmanaihi, by the learned Brahmanas. Uktaha, when advised. Pariveta, faulty because of being a usurper. I am this. Agrabhuk, enjoying in spite of your elder brothers being present. Rajyam, the kingdom. Dehi, give. Agrajaya, to your elder brother. Ashu, immediately. Purarashtra, of your home and the kingdom. Vivriddhaye, for elevation. Translation purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Panduracharya of ISKCON. Translation: because the king was able to make everyone happy for sense gratification, primarily by the touch of his hand, his name was Shantanu. Once, when there was no rainfall in the kingdom for 12 years, and the king consulted his learned Brahminical advisors, they said, "You are faulty for enjoying the property of your elder brother. For the elevation of your kingdom and home, you should return the kingdom to him." Purport: one cannot enjoy sovereignty or perform an Agnihotra Yajna in the presence of one's elder brother, or else one becomes a usurper, known as Parivata. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. I'll read this translation again. Because the king was able to make everyone happy for sense gratification, primarily by the touch of his hand, his name was Shantanu. Once, when there was no rainfall in the kingdom for 12 years, and the king consulted his learned Brahminical advisors, they said, "You are faulty for enjoying the property of your elder brother. For the elevation of your kingdom and home, you should return the kingdom to him." I'll also read the translation of the next two verses, 16 and 17, because this will come our discussion to a logical conclusion. So after reading this translation, we'll discuss it. So this translation of text 16 and 17, it goes like this. When the Brahmanas said this, Maharaj Shantanu went to the forest and requested his elder brother Devapi to take charge of the kingdom. For it is the duty of a king to maintain his subjects. Previously, however, Shantanu's minister Ashvavara had instigated some Brahmanas to induce Devapi to transgress the injunctions of the Vedas and thus make himself unfit for the post of ruler. The Brahmanas deviated Devapi from the path of the Vedic principles, and therefore, when asked by Shantanu, he did not agree to accept the post of ruler. On the contrary, he blasphemed the Vedic principles and therefore became fallen. Under the circumstances, Shantanu again became the king, and Indra, being pleased, showered rains. Devapi later took to the path of mystic yoga to control his mind and senses, and went to the village named Kalapagrama, where he is still living. Okay, so today we discussed several verses from previous chapter and this chapter also. And this gives a list of the personalities, great personalities who came in the dynasty of Chandravamsha. Okay, so we are discussing Chandravamsha here. And right now, several names which we heard, we have already heard of them before, specifically Ajamida, and we have heard of Kuru, we have heard of Arka, we heard of Ahalya, Gautama, Shatananda, Satyadriti, Sharadvan, and whose son was Kripa and daughter was Kripi. Okay, so all these details are actually mentioned in Mahabharata. It's right there in the Adi Parva, and this Amshavatarana Parva, and it's Adi Parva, and there are Upaparvas within that. So there is Amshavatarana Parva and Sambhava Parva. So these two Parvas explain all this, or rather give quite some details, and they also go into the stories of some of these personalities. So in chapter 22, we specifically see about King Drupat. Okay, Drupat we have heard of, Draupadi, Drishtadyumna and his son Drishtaketu. And uh, and now the narration is going to progress of those personalities whom Parikshit Maharaj is already aware of. Okay, so we see in a broader context, this is being spoken by Shukdev Goswami and is speak to Parikshit Maharaj, and the people or the personalities whose details he is going to discuss are those whom Parikshit is already aware of. Just like we know of our father, grandfather, great-grandfather, and beyond that, it's all oblivious. We don't know about anybody. So we can understand for Parikshit Maharaj also, these are great personality. Obviously, these personalities like Parikshit Maharaj were not fallen like us who forget our ancestors, but these are the people who are prominent or who can say as they have shaped the current course of action. Okay, so specifically when I was reading this section, all this 25 verses almost, so there was this mention of Uparichara Vasu. Okay, Uparichara Vasu and Mahabhisha, who became as Shantanu, and Maharaj Pratipa also. And with respect to Uparichara Vasu and Mahabhisha, the elaboration in Mahabharata is quite vast. There are a couple of chapters which are dedicated to Uparichara Vasu. Normally we do not know much about Uparichara Vasu because we don't hear about him, but Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he mentions that of all the devotees who are magnanimous, 3 are most prominent. So one is Nityananda Prabhu, then second is Jada Bharat, and third is Uparichara Vasu. Okay, but from the Shastric point of view, we do not hear much about Uparichara Vasu, but he is a very great personality. He's a great devotee of the Lord. And even when we perform these samskaras, Gopal Bhatta Goswami dedicates a specific section in his Satkriya Sardipika where we perform initial preliminary activities. So whenever you perform a sacrifice, there are this preliminary set of activities, and then there is the actual sacrifice, actual samskara, and then you have this conclusive activities. So in the preliminary set of activities, we invoke the Lord in a ghata. So ghata puja is done. We invoke the Lord and all the great devotees of the Lord. So that is done, but then there's a separate section where Uparichara Vasu is worshipped elaborately, actually, invoking him in a ghata, and then puja is done for him and things like that. So invoking his blessings is like it's an activity which devotees as Vaishnavas we are supposed to do with respect to all these different kinds of sacrifices. So he's a very prominent personality, and his life is mentioned in some detail in Mahabharata. So we can discuss that a little bit. Uparichara Vasu was actually a king, okay, and he was not interested in ruling the kingdom. So he went to the forest and started doing austerities and penances, tapasya. So when a great personality does tapasya, Indra becomes worried. So it happened in this case also. But this time he did not send any apsara. He himself personally came and he tried to convince Uparichara Vasu to stop doing such an austerity. Because he got perturbed that Uparichara Vasu is doing this austerity. Being a pious person, him performing austerity means that he will ultimately gain the position of Indra. But then Indra did not want that, obviously. So he came down and he convinced Uparichara Vasu. He spoke to him and he told that this vast expanse of land will not be protected if you come to the heavenly planets. So therefore you should remain here itself, and then you should rule these subjects. This land will be populated with Varna Shankara if there is no king to uphold the principles of dharma. So like that, there are several verses which explains what all he told to Uparichara Vasu. And he also gave benedictions to Uparichara Vasu to allure him. He said, whatever enjoyment or whatever facilities we have in the heavenly planets, you'll get all these facilities in this material world itself. Okay, I'll give you a vimana which will fly in the air, which will never touch ground. Just like the demigods, when they come to this bhuloka, they don't touch this ground. Their feet is always few inches or up. They don't touch this ground. So similarly, your vimana also will not touch this ground. I'll give you vimana like this. I'll give you a Vaijanti mala with flowers from the heavenly planets, from Kalpavriksha in heavenly planets, which never fade. And I also give you a scepter. A scepter means a rod, a bamboo rod through which a king actually establishes his rule. So when you worship this particular scepter as a representation of me, then you will not have any problem from your enemies. So like that, he gives so many benedictions to Uparichara Vasu. And he also said that although there is no friendship between those in the heavenly realm and those in Bhuloka, but I will accept you as my friend. And whatever help you would need in the future, I'll be able to do that for you. So Uparichara Vasu was a saintly person, and actually he was not doing tapasya to go to heavenly planets, so that was not his mood. But he accepted from Indra for the sake of dharma, thinking that, okay, this will enable me to establish the rule properly and also allow the citizens to do their dharmic duties properly. So he accepted that, and he ruled the kingdom using this. So this bamboo pole, this scepter, was then installed on a mountain, and then it was worshipped. And all the kings from that time onwards in the Chedi kingdom, they used to worship that particular scepter. So that is mentioned. And the name Uparichara Vasu basically came because the chariot which he used to ride, which was given to him by Indra, it always used to stay above the ground. So Uparichara, so that which moves above the ground, that is called as Uparichara. So his name became Uparichara Vasu, one who moves above the ground, one who does not touch the ground. And then he was ruling the kingdom, and there are several details mentioned. It's mentioned that a river named Shuktimati used to flow in his kingdom. Or rather, okay, one more thing which Indra gave was, he told this Chedi kingdom is very prosperous. Among all the kingdoms, among all the land in this whole world, this Chedi kingdom is the most prosperous. And you should become the king of this Chedi kingdom. So he established, Indra established Uparichara Vasu as the king of Chedi kingdom. Okay, and the scepter was installed on a mountain there. And near to this Chedi kingdom, there used to flow a river whose name was Shuktimati. And we understand that the rivers, mountains, they are all deities, they are all personalities themselves. And there was also a mountain whose name was Kolahala. So just like Himavan is a personality, he's a person, and his daughters are Parvati and Ganga. Similarly, Kolahal was also a mountain, and he was also a person. Vindhya is also a person, like that we understand from Shastra. So this Kolahala became attracted to this river, Shuktimati. And to impose himself on her, he stopped her flow. So the river's flow was stopped. And we also understand from Shastra that a river's natural course is to flow. And when we make an attempt to stop it, it's actually a karmic activity, or we can say it's a sinful activity. So from that way, we can understand that even the dams which are built nowadays, this is not proper. Okay, and the reactions are to be seen. The more dams we build, then the nature revolts. So that's there. A river's being a personality, you cannot stop her flow. So dam, although okay, it's a side point anyways. The dams, although it seems to fulfill the purposes of our human civilization, but actually dams are not considered auspicious. They are sinful because the river's flow is being stopped. And specifically, even I think 5, 6 or 7, 8 years back, there was this flood in Kedarnath, and so many things were washed out. And the reason, scientists themselves say, the reason for all this natural disturbance is because lots of dams are being built in these mountain regions, and because of drilling of this particular land, the whole ecosystem has got disrupted. And because of that, these kind of natural calamities are coming up. The rivers, the glaciers are melting, the rivers are not able to flow in the natural course. So therefore, there's disturbance in the natural valley of this whole Uttarakhand area, and therefore these disturbances are coming up. From Shastric point of view, we have to understand that the dams are actually not something which should be done, because a river is meant to flow. So in this particular case, Kolahal, he stopped Shuktimati from flowing because he wanted to impose himself on her. And when Uparichara Vasu, he came to know of this, then he kicked this mountain Kolahala and he created a crack between this particular mountain, and Shuktimati was able to flow. Okay. But still, because of contact between Kolahala and Shuktimati, 2 children were born, one boy and one girl. Okay. That boy and Shuktimati, because she was delivered by Uparichara Vasu, so she gave these 2 children to Uparichara Vasu for serving him. So Uparichara Vasu accepted that boy as his commander-in-chief of the Chedi army, and the girl, whose name was Girika, he married her. Okay, so his wife's name, Uparichara Vasu's wife's name was Girika. Okay. Now, and as kings and queen, they were living a happy life. And once Girika's time of conception to bear children had come, and at that exact moment, Uparichara Vasu's forefathers, they came to him and they told that your management of kingdom is not going on properly. There are sages in the forest who are being disturbed by these wild animals in the forest. So therefore, you should go and hunt some of them, these wild creatures, so that the sages can perform their duties properly. So now the time of conception of Girika had come, but then Uparichara Vasu has been given an order by the Pitris, by his forefathers, to go do this particular act. So then he goes to the forest, and then when he goes to the forest, this is a very nice season. When he goes to the forest, spring is there, flowers are blossoming, wind is blowing on nicely, and rainfall, waterfalls are there. So all that incites the mood of conjugal love within Uparichara Vasu. So in that mood, he discharges semen and he collects it in a leaf, okay, thinking of Girika. And he, being a very religious and pious person, he understands the potency of his seed, the potency of his semen, and he does not want it to go waste. So what he does is he collects that into a leaf and he asks a bird, a hawk, to take that leaf and go to Girika so that she can impregnate herself. Then this hawk, it takes the leaf, okay, and then it flies. But another hawk sees from the top that this hawk who is carrying that particular leaf is basically carrying some meat portion, a piece of meat. And therefore they fight with each other. And this fight happens on the top of Yamuna river. Okay. So what happens is that semen or the seed, it falls down into Yamuna river. And there is one fish whose name is Adrika. And she is actually an Apsara who has been cursed by Brahma. Okay. So this fish then swallows this particular semen, and then she bears 2 children. Okay, again a son and a girl. And again, the semen was lost and Girika was not impregnated. But then the story continues such that this fish, whose name was Adrika, who was an Apsara actually, who was cursed by Brahma for some reason which is not mentioned, then she bears this semen for 10 months. And then the fishermen near to this Yamuna river, they catch this particular fish and they cut this fish. The fishermen, they eat fish, so they cut this fish and they were astonished to see 2 children, human children, in the belly of this fish. And Brahma's curse to this Adrika was such that once she bears 2 human children and she is cut, then she'll get delivered and she'll go back as Apsara. So then Adrika went back to heavenly planets, and these 2 children were there with this fisherman. Okay. So, because all these astonishing things had happened, these fishermen took these 2 children to Uparichara Vasu. So, Uparichara Vasu, then that boy who was born, he established him as the king of Matsya. And if you know Mahabharata, the Matsya kingdom was ruled by Virat, in whose shelter the Pandavas lived the 13th year of their incognito period. So, this Virat is actually descendant of this particular child who was born from Adrika, from the semen of Uparichara Vasu. So they are also descendants of this lunar dynasty only, Soma dynasty. And the girl was given back by Uparichara Vasu to the king of this fisherman whose name was Dashraj. And she was Satyavati. Okay, Satyavati is the one who then begot Vyasdev from Parashar Muni, and she later got married to Shantanu. Okay, so Uparichara Vasu did, and then later from Girika he had further children also, which are mentioned in this here. So, you see, right? The son of King Kriti was Uparichara Vasu, and among his sons, headed by Brihadratha, were Kushamba, Matsya, Pratyagra, and Chedipa. So this Matsya, who is mentioned here, this is the child of Adrika from the semen of Uparichara Vasu. And they all became kings, later became the rulers of Chedi state. And it's further mentioned in Jiva Goswami, in his Bhakti Sandarbha, he writes this, expounding the glories of, because all this instance that we have seen, this is all like the Grihastha life of Uparichara Vasu, but later, because initially also, this is like, this is similar to what Priyavrata did in Bhagavatam. In the 5th canto it's mentioned, right? Priyavrata was into austerities, one of the sons of Swayambhuva Manu. The other 3, the 3 daughters, Akuti, Devahuti and Prasuti were married, And then Uttanapad was also married, and he had 2 wives, and Dhruva was born to him, and they were continuing the dynasty. But Priyavrata was not interested. So what he did, he went to forest and he started doing tapasya. But because he was a great personality and he was uh, most eligible or perfect person to rule over the kingdom, then all the demigods came and they requested him to get married, to have children, and continue with the progeny. So then he had his grahastha life, but later he becomes disgusted with it. And then finally he engages in devotional service and goes back home, back to God. So this is what we see in Srimad Bhagavatam. So Uparichara Vasu's instances, this story that we are discussing, similar to that. He was engaged in austerities and penances to satisfy the Supreme Lord. Then Indra comes, then all these things happen. But at later point of time, because Indra was his friend, Uparichara Vasu, he fought on the side of Indra against the war with the demons. Okay, and he helped them to defeat the demons. And later, then he went to Pataloka so that he cannot be disturbed and he can continue with his devotional service. So there, the demons, because they have been defeated with the help of Uparichara Vasu, they went to Pataloka with an intention of killing Uparichara Vasu. But then being a great personality and devotee of the Lord, he could not be killed. But by the association of Uparichara Vasu, all the demons who were there to kill him, they all became pure devotees of the Lord. So this is mentioned by Jiva Goswami in he quotes from Vishnu Dharma Purana. Okay, he quotes from Vishnu Dharma Purana and tells us that all the demons, by the association of Uparichara Vasu, they became pure devotees of the Lord. And finally, Lord Vishnu was so much satisfied with Vasu that he personally came and took him back home, back to Godhead. Okay, so this is the instance of Uparichara Vasu. So although Bhagavatam does not elaborate on that, but then from different scriptures we understand that Uparichara Vasu was a great personality. And when Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, among the most magnanimous souls, Nityananda Prabhu, Jada Bharat and Uparichara Vasu, we can understand how important he is as a Vaishnava for us. Okay, then continuing the dynasty, then he speaks about Pratipa. So this is text 13. So sons of Pratipa was Devapi, Shantanu and Bahalik. Okay, and Devapi left the kingdom of his father and went to the forest, and therefore Shantanu became the king. So in this particular purport, this particular verse, 14 and 15 and 16 and 17, we see that there was no rainfall in the kingdom for 12 years. And the king consulted his learned Brahmanical advisors, and they said the fault is because of this Parivata, this principle of Parivata. Okay. This particular point is actually mentioned in Manu Samhita also, in the section of which describes about the Shraddha ceremony. Okay. I'll just read the purport here once more to bring in the context. So Srila Prabhupada writes, one cannot enjoy sovereignty or perform an Agnihotra Yagya in the presence of one's elder brother, or else one becomes an usurper, known as Pariveta. Okay, so when Prabhupada writes about Agnihotra Yagya, and we speaks about Pariveta, this particular section of Pariveta comes in the Shraddha section of Manu Samhita. Shraddha section is where a human being, a person specifically of the first 3 varnas, is supposed to perform or supposed to do Shraddha ceremony or Tarpana for his departed forefathers. And one who usurps that particular right from the elder brother and does the Shraddha ceremony himself without involving the elder brother, he is called as a Pariveta, or one who has usurped his right to perform the Shraddha ceremony. Because in Vedic culture, Shraddha ceremony is not only for the benefit of the departed forefathers, but it also is a religious duty that one must perform for his own journey in his next life, for his own piety, for accumulating religious merit. So Shraddha ceremony is as important for the departed forefather as it is for us, or rather it's the other way around. It's as important for us as it is for the departed forefathers. And there are several rules which are mentioned here, and one of the rules is this, that one should not perform Shraddha ceremony for somebody or when his elder brother is actually present. So the right to perform the Shraddha ceremony remains with the elder brother. And this particular instance of Devapi going to the forest is again mentioned in Mahabharata. So this appears in multiple places. It appears in Adi Parva, and it also appears in Udyoga Parva. Okay, and it is mentioned in 2 different ways. In Adi Parva, it's mentioned Devapi went to the forest on his own volition. On his own, he wanted to do tapasya. So therefore, when he was just a small boy, he left the kingdom and he went to the forest. Okay, and Pratipa and the next son was Shantanu. So therefore, he was established as the king. But, so this is what is mentioned in Adi Parva. And in Udyoga Parva, Dhritarashtra is speaking to Duryodhan, trying to convince him not to engage in fight. Okay, so this in Udyoga Parva is the whole Parva is about this struggle between the Pandavas and Kauravas outside of the battlefield, where the Pandavas try to get their share of kingdom, but Duryodhana is stubborn. So this is where all the Duta comes from Panchal Desh, from Virat Desh, then he speaks, that doesn't work out. Then Sanjaya goes to Pandavas, that also does not work out. Then again Krishna comes finally, and that also did not work out. So this is all mentioned in Udyoga Parva. And all the elders of the Kuru assembly also try to convince Duryodhan that no, you should not get into fight with the Pandavas, it will destroy the dynasty. And Bhishma speaks about this, and he says that I have been the pillar of this kingdom for such a long time, because after the kingdom which was established by Pratipa, who is the father of Devapi, Shantanu and Bahalik, he consolidated the whole kingdom. And after Pratipa left, then Shantanu consolidated it, and after Shantanu left, it's only me. Because if we see in Mahabharata itself, Bhishma took a vow of not getting married and not producing any children and not even ascending the throne of Hastinapur. So the burden or the king should be either Vichitravira or Chitrangada, who were born from Satyavati and Shantanu. So, but Chitrangada was killed by a Gandharva called Chitrangada because they both had the same name and he was envious of him. And Vichitravirya got a disease and he also died prematurely when he was just young. So there were no descendants. And during that time, Satyavati goads, or Satyavati tells Bhishma to take up the kingdom. But then he does not. But on the backside, he consolidates the whole kingdom so that the kingdom does not fall apart. There are no descendants. There are no prospective kings who can continue with this dynasty. So Bhishma consolidated that. And he tells all these things to Duryodhana, saying this much effort we have taken by not transgressing dharma, and at the same time we have also ensured that this kingdom is consolidated and the citizens are protected in that way. And now because of your foolishness, you are going to throw everything away. So Bhishma speaks like this, then Vidura speaks, and Gandhari speaks, and then finally Dhritarashtra also speaks. And he then recites this story. And he says, see, what is happening now has actually happened before also. What has happened? Devapi was the elder brother, and Shantanu is the younger brother. Right? But Devapi was disbarred, or Devapi had some disease, had some skin disease, and because of that, he was barred from becoming the king. And then Devapi, being dissatisfied with that, he therefore went to the forest to engage in austerities and penances. And Shantanu continued with the kingdom, and he consolidated the kingdom, and Shantanu's descendants are who are continuing this particular kingdom. So in the same way, now I was unqualified because I was blind, and Pandu was established as the king. And Pandu being the king, he did not, or I ascended the throne. Actually, what happened in Mahabharata was Dhritarashtra was never coronated as the king. He was never there was no ceremony conducted for him as the king. It's just because Pandu died prematurely, and Pandu had, before going to the forest, he had actually given the administrative, it's like power of attorney to Dhritarashtra to conduct all the kingdom's activities, because Pandu was not interested. And then Pandu died, and Dhritarashtra assumed the role of a king, but actually the kingdom belongs to the descendants of Pandu. So Dhritarashtra says that the same way Shantanu's descendants followed, his sons became the emperors, and they followed this king, and they came in this line. Similarly, Pandu's sons should become the king, and even in terms of who was born first, Yudhishthira was born first before Duryodhana was born. So that way he should become the king. And he recites this particular story. And here he says that Devapi had a skin disease, and that is why the Brahmanas, they disbarred him from engaging in or becoming a king. And Shantanu assumed the throne. And Bahalik, he went to his mama's house, means his maternal uncle's house, and he took the charge of kingdom there. And it's also mentioned, I don't remember the source, it's also mentioned that actually when Pratipa had several wives, and one of the wives came from this Bahalik kingdom, and she was married to Pratipa with this desire from the daughter's father that the son who's born from her should become the king of Bahalik. So this is mentioned in some places. And some places it's mentioned that Pratipa himself divided the kingdom and he gave Bahalik his portion of land. And it's also mentioned in Mahabharata that Bahalik actually went to his mama's house and took care of his kingdom. So several instances are mentioned here. Okay, so yes, so with respect to Devapi, these two things are mentioned, that he on his own volition he went to the forest, and therefore because he is the elder brother, he is supposed to do the Shraddha ceremony, or he is supposed to perform, he is supposed to get married first, he is supposed to perform the Agnihotra sacrifice, he is supposed to perform the Shraddha rites for your father Pratipa, who is no more. But Shantanu had become the king and he is doing all these things before his elder brother. And the elder brother is probably not even aware of Pratipa's passing away, because Devapi left home when he was only a young boy, as mentioned in Adi Parva. So he left, and then he was not even aware probably that Pratipa had departed. So therefore he was not performing the Shraddha sacrifice or any other sacrifice. And Shantanu was doing. And this is the reason why for 12 years there is no rain. Okay. And then in 16 and 17, it's mentioned that when the Brahmana said this, then Maharaj Shantanu had nothing against his brother, so he wanted to go to Devapi and bring him back to make him the king. But his ministers, Shantanu's ministers, they understood that Shantanu is ruling the kingdom very nicely, and they did not want Devapi to become the emperor or the king. So what they did is, before Shantanu's messengers can reach Devapi, they went ahead, and then these Brahmanas spoke atheistic philosophy to Devapi, and they bewildered his mind. So when Shantanu's messengers came requesting him to become the king, then Devapi spoke against the Vedic principles. He spoke against the Vedic principles, he blasphemed the Vedic principles, and because of that he was considered as fallen. Which means that now he is not qualified to perform Shraddha ceremony because he has blasphemed the Vedic scriptures. Now he cannot perform Agnihotra sacrifice because he has blasphemed Vedic scriptures, he does not have faith in it. So what we learn from this is, to perform all these Vedic sacrifices, we must have faith in it. We should not blaspheme the Vedas at the same time engage in Vedic activities. That will not work. And this also is elaborated in this Shraddha ceremony. And it's mentioned that one who is doing a Shraddha ceremony, he must understand what he is doing and he must have complete faith in it. And if one who does not have complete faith in the Shraddha ceremony, if he performs the sacrifice, nothing will reach the forefathers. And it's also mentioned there that even the Brahmanas to whom we give this Shraddha food, if they don't have any, or they are also blasphemers of Vedic scriptures, then they also will not, then the forefathers will not be benefited. If they are atheistic or if they are not properly following Brahminical culture, then nothing. Although we might perform the rituals, but still nothing will reach the forefathers. So all those details are mentioned there. So now, because Devapi is fallen from his position, so Shantanu is the eligible king now. And Indra becomes pleased with him, and then rains come, like this. So this is the story. Okay. But when I was reading this, today also it was raining, and I was just thinking, it's a small transgression, correct? This Shantanu becoming the king, and he's a qualified king, he's a proper Vedic dharmic king, he's an emperor of this world. And just because the elder brother was not doing Agnihotra sacrifice, or was not doing Shraddha sacrifice, there was no rain for 12 years. Right? It seems to be a very big punishment for that. So there are several connotations, so several things. I could not explore much, but from what we have read, we could understand that the principles which were followed during that time in Dwapar Yuga were, just like there are things which we do naturally, correct? So this following of dharma was so natural to them that transgression requires effort. To transgress the Vedic principles or dharma, it required effort from our side. But to follow dharma, people are so cultured that they not naturally used to do it. And even if there was a small transgression also, the reactions used to be quite severe and heavy. Okay, but here we see, rain is coming in Kali Yuga, where we can understand what kind of dharmic principles we are following. But rain is coming. So the only reference or only thing I could think of is one point which Srila Prabhupada mentioned when he went to Hyderabad once with his disciples. There was no rain, there was drought during that time, and it was for a long time. I think a couple of years. I don't remember, but I think it's 2 or 3 years. There was no rain, it was severe drought, and Prabhupada came with his disciples and they had a huge Harinam Sankirtan. And with that, within a couple of days or within a week, rain started to pour in Hyderabad. And Prabhupada mentioned that For Kali Yuga, this is the dharmic principle. Because we did Harinam Sankirtan, therefore there is rain. Otherwise, there is no rain. So, it also enhances this fact that in Kali Yuga, we are not qualified to perform all these different kind of religious principles. And what to speak of, Maharaj Shantanu here is the king. And now we are speaking about democracy. And we know about our politicians. So, what to speak of following dharma? There's nothing there. But the only reason why there is still prosperity in this world is because of the presence of devotees and their presence and their doing of devotional service. That's the only thing that we can understand. That's the only way it works out. And we can also see in Science of Self-Realization, Srila Prabhupada, this particular thing is mentioned, where a person from Andhra Pradesh Relief Fund, he asked for devotees' help to distribute food. And what does Prabhupada say? He said, because you are not engaging in devotional service, none of your philanthropic activities will have any effect. Because once you perform dharma, then naturally all the prosperity which is required in this material world automatically comes. Otherwise, just doing superficial activities with transgressing of Vedic principles will not work. So, there's some things which we can understand. And it will also be mentioned that this Devapi is in the forest, he is performing tapasya and is still living. Like we normally, when we speak of Chiranjeevis, we do not take the name of Devapi, but it's mentioned in Shastra, it comes in Srimad Bhagavatam itself, that Devapi and Meru will continue the dynasty of the solar dynasty, the Surya dynasty, and Devapi will continue the lunar dynasty after this Kali Yuga completes. So when the next Satya Yuga comes, then they will be the initiators of moon dynasty and sun dynasty. So that's also mentioned in Shastra. So that is there. And there was, I think that's what here. Oh yes, there's also a story of Mahabhisha, but I think we don't have time to discuss it. That's also a very glorious story, because Mahabhisha, it's mentioned in Shastra that he went to the heavenly planets and he was so pious that he performed 1000 Ashwamedha Yagyas and 100 Rajasuya Yagyas. He performed 1000 Ashwamedha Yagyas and 100 Rajasuya Yagyas, and by that potency he went to the heavenly planets, and there he gets attracted to Ganga, and then Brahma curses them because that attraction was not proper, and then he comes down and becomes the son of Pratipa, and he becomes Shantanu. And that is why Shantanu is married to Ganga, because Mahabhisha got attracted to Ganga in the heavenly planets. There's some other stories are there. Okay, so I'll stop here. So there are several things we discussed, and I can understand, this might seem fantastic, this might seem, how is it possible? But Shastra and Vyasdev, as Prabhupada said, Vyasdev does not have any business in bewildering us or in telling some stories, some mundane stories or some stories like this. So there's a purpose behind that. And these are the things which happened. So we can also understand, if 100 years back or even 50 years back, if someone would have told that there will be mobile phones and we can speak from miles and miles away in just one click, people would not have believed that. But now it's possibility. The possibility is there. Now it's possible. Now we are doing that. So our worldview is such that whatever we experience now, we in our conditioned state limit that, okay, this much is only possible. We do not think beyond, we do not see beyond. That's our conditioned nature. But actually, the Shastra opens the eye that there are several things which were beyond our understanding with respect to our logic, with respect to our present knowledge we possess of this material world. So, they are there in Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is Amala Purana. There is nothing faulty in Bhagavatam. So, we accept these things as it is. Okay, I'll stop here. If you have any questions, you can discuss. Yes, Prabhu. Yes.
In the samskaras while performing initially, so there are oblations given to Uparichara Vasu also.
Yes.
Chedi Raja is called.
Yes, Chedi Raja Vasu, yes.
Yeah. So that is when remembering the ancestors in that context, it comes right while performing the samskaras as offering that.
Yes.
So is this meant for particular purpose of samskaras only, or even during regular Shraddha ceremonies also, the Acharyas meant that offering has to be?
Regular Shraddha ceremony, if you see in Satkriya Sardipika, Gopala Bhatta Goswami does not mention a set of rituals for Shraddha ceremony. Because as devotees, when performing devotional service itself takes care of whatever we are obliged to do to the forefathers. Devarshi Bhutapta Nram Pitrinam Nayam Ridi Nacha Nayam Ridi Rajan Sarvatmanaya Sharanam Sharanyam Gato Mukundam Parihatya Kartum. So all these obligations that a human being has for his forefathers are automatically taken care of. So in Satkriya Sardipika, Gopal Bhatta Goswami does not give a specific set of ceremony for Shraddha. So, when with respect to Gaudiya Vaishnavism, we actually, whatever worship we do is for the Supreme Lord, and even those living entities to whom we worship, we consider them as pure devotees of the Lord. Or rather, they are pure devotees of the Lord, that's why we worship them. So that should be the understanding. So we actually do not worship Chaitanya Vasu because he is a forefather, he is a Pitri, or he is a common ancestor, or he is a great pious personality. We worship him as a devotee of the Lord. And just like there are several types of devotees, there are Gopas, there are Gopis, there are also these Kumaras. So there are different categories of devotees, if we can say so. So Chaitanya also can be in a specific category of Pitris like that. But then we worship him as a devotee of the Lord. And we specifically don't follow the Shraddha ceremony. And as Siddhanta Saraswati has told, we know that for devotees who are practicing sincerely, initiated devotees practicing sincerely without any deviation, even if they are sadhana bhaktas, they don't have to perform Shraddha ceremony. Just worship the Lord and feed the devotees, and that itself takes care of everything. After the father or mother or whoever has departed, the whole contamination period gets over in 3 days. And that's it. And then the devotee resumes his normal services. So that's about it. It's elaborately mentioned in Bhakti Siddhanta Vaibhav. So that's there. So we don't have to actually perform Shraddha ceremony like this. So we don't have to worship. In that context, we worship him as a pure devotee of the Lord. Okay. Yes. Srila Prabhupada ki, Srimad Bhagavatam ki.